the United States of America. She was born in 1776, had to fight for her independence as an infant, and had to suffer growing pains just like a child progressing toward adulthood. Before she flowered, she endured several wars, a few insurrections, and even a governmental crisis that happily produced the finest political system ever devised by man. By the time she was 100 years old, still a youngster in the life of a nation, she had become well established as the refuge of the world's tired, hungry, and poor, who left everything in the old world to walk upon her soil. Beyond those millions who came to America, there were many millions more who took comfort and found hope in knowing that there really was such a bastion of freedom and opportunity, such a place where dreams could be transformed into realities. What made America great? What set her apart from other nations and other lands? Was it the blessing of natural resources? No. There are equal or greater resources in all of the inhabited continents. Was it her people that made America the envy of all the world? Not really. The people who transformed America from a backward wilderness into such a marvel came here from across the oceans. Obviously, something enabled them to do more in their new surroundings than they had been able to accomplish in their former homelands. Was it government's wisdom or government's programs that spurred our nation to such remarkable heights? No again. It was not what government did that made America great. It was what government was prevented from doing that made the difference. The real key to America's greatness is freedom for the individual. Freedom to work, to produce, to succeed, and especially to keep the fruits of one's labors. Here a person is even possessed of the freedom to fail and the freedom to start over again. As much as the source of America's greatness has always been freedom to do this or that, the wonder of America is that her people were free from the stifling presence of government power. The American people have enjoyed more freedom than any other people in history. Yet unrestrained personal freedom can produce its own form of tyranny. True greatness results when people who are free of government control choose to limit their own actions with moral codes, like the Ten Commandments. And this combination, limited government and personal morality, is what has always characterized America. As Alexis de Tocqueville put it in the 1840s, after visiting the churches of our land, America is great because America is good, and if America ceases to be good, America will cease to be great. Our people were free, but they were also good. The birth certificate of the United States of America is the Declaration of Independence. Here we find the fundamental premise upon which our nation was built, the self-evident truth that men are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that in order to secure these rights, governments are instituted. It's all very clear and very simple. God created man and endowed him with certain unalienable rights. Men created government and delegated to it certain powers to protect those rights, to life, liberty, and property, and also to speak, publish, practice religion freely, etc. Our nation's founders knew that government did not give them their rights, God did. And they also knew that government's purpose is to guard against the suppression of those rights by any foreign or domestic power, even by government itself. Yes, it's all very simple, but it is ever so easy to take it all for granted. The early Americans had to fight for their independence. Everyone knows about the war for independence from British domination, but not too many are aware that the war was conducted first under a governmental system called the Continental Congress, and then under another called the Articles of Confederation. These were loose associations of the several states that granted the federal government too little power. They did not provide for sufficient executive power, called for no judiciary to settle disputes between the states, and established no power to tax, not even to pay for military forces. The federal governments under the Continental Congress and the Articles of Confederation were indeed weak, but they were not weak because they possessed few of the powers accumulated by government today. They were weak because they did not have sufficient power to carry out government's proper functions. Despite the deficiencies of our nation's early governments and largely as a result of the personal leadership of George Washington, America defeated the British and independence was assured. Then on May 25th, 1787, after several conferences had been held elsewhere, representatives of a majority of the 13 states met in Philadelphia for the purpose of revising the Articles of Confederation. After only a few days of deliberations, sentiment to build a completely new governmental system began to take hold. By June 19th, the delegates decided not to revise the Articles, but to construct an entirely new national government. After taking that momentous step, they worked through the entire summer, finally approved the completely new Constitution on September 17th, sent it to the states for ratification, and adjourned. The men at that Constitutional Convention, Washington, Franklin, Madison, and others, constructed the new governmental system in such a way as to keep faith with the Declaration of Independence, to empower government to act in defense of people's rights and no more. The Constitution they gave us was written to govern the government, not the people. While it grants government certain powers to act, its chief concern was to limit the federal government to clearly specified powers, to leave the states essentially sovereign, and to let the people be free. The marvel was that they were able to satisfy both those who wanted sovereign states and those who wanted all of America to be joined as one nation. They accomplished making one out of many, which is what the Latin phrase e pluribus unum means, out of many, one. And they did it in such a way that the states retained their independence, even while joined together for mutual protection. This, of course, is what is called the federal system. Federal powers were to be concerned almost exclusively with foreign affairs and domestic tranquility. The states were to be left with whatever other government powers might be needed. Should errors or excesses gain favor in any of the states, the built-in competition among the states would speedily make such error and excess obvious. But if federal power becomes excessive, there is no parallel government to show that it has gone wrong. This is America's marvelous heritage, a constitutional republic whose laws limited government to protecting the God-given rights of the people, and where the people were to be limited by the strictures of their deeply held religious beliefs. No wonder America grew and prospered. No wonder millions came here, and many millions more deeply admired our nation from afar. Sad to say, however, that there are some within our country who want to change the American system. They seek to convert our republic with its rule of law into a democracy with its rule by majority and then to rule by themselves. They don't want government power held in check. They don't want our nation to remain independent. They don't even want the truths in the Declaration of Independence to be ingrained on the hearts of Americans, especially the truth that rights come from God. This basic foundation of Americanism can no longer be taught in the government schools that all of us pay for and many of us send our children to. Truly, the enemies of America have made great progress. Not content, however, some of these individuals seek to use the 200th anniversary of the various events which established this nation to formalize changes in the American system. They are counting on the apathy and ignorance of the people to enable them to proceed. Do Americans really understand their marvelous heritage? Sadly, they do not. It is already true that most Americans fail to appreciate that their rights come from God Almighty, not from government. Also, Americans in great numbers have been persuaded that national sovereignty and independence are outmoded ideas, and that in order to ensure peace in a hostile world, all nations and all peoples must submit to an international power like the United Nations. Few stop to realize that any international authority powerful enough to enforce peace is also powerful enough to create world tyranny. Further, a sizable portion of the people of our nation have been led to think that our Constitution may have been perfectly fine for an agrarian society of fewer than 5 million people 200 years ago, but that it does not meet the needs of our highly industrialized nation of 240